Everybody, welcome back to the show. We're going to talk about blame, acceptance, gratitude, and your choices. And we have naysayer Nancy. Wait, who are you again? No, Deb's here today. We're going to talk about this next. I'm trying to lighten the mood for her, get her to laugh a little bit. So we're going to, you better hold on tight because we're going to shake things up, rattle them around. Let's go. Welcome to the Matt Logan Show. So, Deb, I need to introduce you first, obviously. I've known you for a long time now. We just talked about 10 years, actually, is how I got to know you through essentially the death of my daughter. Mm-hmm. And so that whole experience. But it seems weird because you've gone through such a different transition in your life, in professional life for sure. And we're going to dig into some very deep subjects. We see a lot of things going around from literally the top of our country down, people blaming everybody else for things, and it's such a natural way to live, isn't it?
Yes.
But you're a coach. You know what? Take it over. Tell us about yourself real briefly.
You have to give me the mic. Come on, Mike.
Yeah.
Matt, I call you.
Yeah, no, we're good.
Anyway, so I guess for me, I am a coach, and I wouldn't necessarily call myself a life coach, but personal development. So anything with goal setting, mindset, things like that I have become certified in or practice. I'm also a chemical dependency counselor licensed through the state of Minnesota. And then I also have a master's degree in psychology and counseling. So I am a therapist in practice. So I'm not licensed at this time. That takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that as well. And that I've been working on for a few years now. And just recently, I think it was the beginning of May, I started my own private practice.
What?
So
you're doing your own thing? Congratulations.
Yeah.
I actually knew that. But.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. It is called Beyond Your Limits. And of course, there's a big story behind how I got that name, but I'm going to let people kind of check out things themselves to see where that came from.
We should leave them hanging.
I love to leave people hanging like that.
Yeah. So we wanted to, I'm just looking some stuff up. I'm not being rude on my phone. I just thought of something as you were talking, and I had some notes on my phone from quite a while ago that I think would be very relevant to the conversation. And we chatted back and forth via Messenger and kind of came up with this theme of blame, acceptance, gratitude, and your choices. Specifically because the foundation of a lot of things that fall apart is blame, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean,
yes.
that's at the bottom. That's what really crumbles a lot of things, whether it be relationships or jobs or all of it. Elected officials, see a lot of different things that blame destroys and ruins.
Correct. Yeah.
Help us understand that foundation and why you wanted to start there. We both wanted to start there.
Right.
I mean, that was the first thing I put, right? Like blame.
Yes.
I had
blame.
it arranged a little differently.
Yeah. I switched things around a little bit, but to kind of start off with blame is that when things happen to us that aren't what we want, whether we do it to ourselves or not, so to speak, the blame or why things happen is always pinpointed towards somebody else or something else, because it's difficult for us to want to take responsibility for that. And that is one of the biggest keys is, again, taking responsibility. So again, we go into acceptance and gratitude. But blame is huge because it alleviates us from having to have any focus upon our wrongdoing.
Personal responsibility is something that right from the beginning, I've been really adamant on that, and anything that I speak about, really, if you really look at what the core of the message would be, it's about our personal responsibility. It's never, I can't say it's never said, but it's rarely said that blatantly. But when I wrap up, when I do a speech or whatever, I wrap everything around that thought is personal responsibility. Because at the end of the day, no matter what it is, we're responsible for everything.
Yep.
Our attitude, I also say circumstances do not make us who we are. They reveal who we are. And I've been really adamant about how important that is to understand. And when we blame other people, when we blame our circumstances for our reactions or the decisions that we do make, it has been very devastating to a lot of people that I know personally. How do you talk to somebody about personal responsibility when they have no interest in that?
Well, that's the problem, is that when somebody isn't interested in something, there really isn't a whole lot you can do. You can always say your piece, but that doesn't mean that anything's going to change. So that goes into you and that other person having to accept that there may or may not be a change. Now, if you want to go back for a second and say to blame, you have two people, whether it's a friendship, marriage, or anything like that, and something goes wrong, whether it's the dog ran away, well, you let the dog out, well, you didn't lock the door, well, you didn't shut the gate. It's always you. Well, maybe so, that maybe the other person didn't do something, but there's also a responsibility that we have to take in certain aspects of relationships as well. And so my biggest thing is when I talk to couples specifically or in relationships that are struggling, is communication is huge. It's key. It's listening. You have to listen, so then you're not blaming somebody else for anything that isn't necessary. And on top of it, in relationships like that, there's two people, right? So that means that you always have a part in that, whether it's 5% or 95%. So whether you have the big or the little, or it's a 50-50, everybody needs to take responsibility for their part. Whether they were the ones that did the bad thing, like leaving the door open or something like that, but it's saying, okay, well, I could have double checked, or maybe I could have changed the latch, or, there's always just something, it seems like, there where we could even just say, hey, that's too bad that you left the door open, or that the latch didn't click, or that the dog ran away. It's just also meeting that person where they're at. So you have to listen to each other and really understand where that person's coming from if you're looking to also then get that same response. It's respect and it's acceptance into everybody has a part. And it doesn't mean that it has to be a bad thing. We're all human. We all make mistakes. That was a hard thing for me to grasp for a long time.
Yeah, a lot of people struggle with that we all make mistakes. Like, I can't tell you the number of conversations I have that people are like, no, I don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you want to rewind to go back to the beginning of this, you could pinpoint a few times that I made mistakes and said the wrong thing the wrong way, or I called you Mike, I think, instead of Matt. I mean, I could say Scratch. We got to start over.
Believe me, I've been called way worse.
Me too.
And that is part of it, right? Like I say too, many times, and people get sick of what I say, but just because I'm wrong doesn't make you right.
Correct.
And there's a lot of different perceptions. There's opinions. There's, we can get there by going left, and we can get there by going right. We can get there by going straight. I mean, there's a lot of different nuance to most things in life and in the world, for sure.
Right. And that's, I think, one thing is whether it's politics or religion, which are two things I don't talk about with anybody because it's a never-ending conversation, battle, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has their opinion. Everybody has a perception. And whether what you say or think is right is, again, whether it's right or it's wrong, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's written in a book, well, somebody wrote it, but it doesn't mean it has to be right.
Correct. I used to think that way too, not to talk to people about politics and religion. I really did. And I've now 10 years into being a communicator, I suppose I could be labeled. I've understood the importance that you must do that because you have what we have in the last certainly few years is politics is now everywhere. Oh, yeah. It's in sports, it's in and certainly professional sports, as we all know, and it's also gotten into little kids sports that we see in different larger communities, and it even is bleeding into smaller communities, and it should never be there ever. In no matter what, if it's a sport, keep politics out of it, right? And so if we don't talk about those things in some kind of fashion, it gets to be where it's only one way because one particular thought process then dominates. Right.
So I could rephrase myself and say, I don't mind having those types of conversations as long as it's going to be respectful. There's always the healthy battles, the good ones. I mean, I could talk, if I'm going to believe one thing and you believe another, I'm happy to sit down and talk with whoever about those things as long as we can be respectful of each other's opinions.
And you said a very important word, my belief, your belief.
Right.
Your belief being the important word.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that people don't understand that it boils down to a belief system. And if you back up to wherever you need to go, you believe that because of.
Right.
And most people say, no, it's a fact. Well, a lot of it's belief and we don't realize it.
Right.
But the notes that I had from actually probably even a year ago already is why people blame, attack, or criticize. And one of them is because they have not been trained how to master and control their mind, emotions, and negative ego programming. This was a conversation I actually had with a psychologist, and we came up with this 6 different. Obviously, I don't use big words like ego programming.
Me neither.
But we had this discussion, and I had a lot of questions, and so we came up with this. And he said that he probably this is online somewhere, or something similar to it is what he suggested, and it's so true. Ego programming, right? We're all programmed from wherever at whatever point to have this ego, and that we are right. You did leave the door open and let the dog out. And that's where a lot of that starts, is our ego. I thought that was very powerful when as you started to talk, and that reminded me of that.
It's also our desire to be perfect.
Yeah.
Or the need to be perfect.
Right. And that circles around to the fact that we all do wrong stuff. Like, we're not always right. We're hardly ever right when it comes to that. But let's jump to acceptance. It's very interesting when we were communicating back and forth about this, and acceptance came up, because I have done a number of speeches on tolerance versus acceptance, right? Yeah. And that's a very deep, sticky subject.
Yes, it is.
Because they are two very different things, and most people connect them. So acceptance, describe that. Like, how would you verbalize that?
So when I think of acceptance, I think about just it's being okay with something, whether it's something that you agree or believe or not. It's not anything you can change. There's the serenity prayer. A lot of people know that. It's accepting that I can't change that. I have to accept, Matt, that you have black hair.
Yeah.
I have to accept that you're a Ford guy. I have to accept that you're a Christian. Whether I like that or not, that's not anybody else's, it's not anybody else's business what you are.
Have you ever been in sales?
I have not. Well, I shouldn't say I haven't. I have a little bit, but not big. No.
So there's a concept in sales that most of the different sales type teachings would teach about, and one of those is a bias. And so you mentioned black hair. So if you are working with a customer and really early on you notice that they don't like you for some reason, it literally could be because they've had a bad experience with somebody with your color hair or your hairstyle. And most people don't understand that that's there and in their subconscious. And as a trained salesperson, you should recognize that, like, hey, there's something about me, and we want to serve this customer. So I need to step back and step away and accept that fact, ego programming again, and step back away from this customer and have Deb come in with her blonde hair and help them and see if we can get somewhere.
It's interesting you say that because in my profession, that was talked about a lot in my education and in my training. One of the biggest things as a practicing therapist is that you really have to pay attention to people. And that can happen a lot of times, but maybe it's not them, but maybe it's you. And it's not about necessarily like, okay, you have black hair. If that's triggering of something, then yes, you need to change.
Everybody likes the trigger word.
Right, the word trigger. I mean, it's kind of like a post-traumatic stress thing or from something. If it's going to affect the way that you treat that person or the outcome of the care you're going to give them, then you need to kind of say something and excuse yourself, help them find somebody else. The same way as if there's something going on where you feel there's something off with that individual and you and the connection, it's something that should be brought up and asked about by, for instance, myself. A lot of times people, though, will excuse themselves before you even get to that point. The first meeting that you usually have with somebody, you're able to tell if there's going to be the possibility of you being able to form an alliance and connect and work together. I've had clients where I'm like, this isn't probably going to work because they're really, kind of butting heads with me. But then after the end of it all, they're just like, boy, you really helped me. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So it's being open and being yourself and allowing them to be who they are and not...
and accepting who they are.
Yeah.
Not tolerating a bad behavior or
Right.
tolerating their attitude towards something or
Correct.
you even, but accepting that this is who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Yeah. So PTSD, we know. And here's the thing. There's a lot of situations in my life that could have created massive PTSD, and I'm not saying that it doesn't technically exist. But here's what I call it: properly trusting sovereign direction.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's one of those things like, and then people are like, they hear the word sovereign. Well, you're just bringing in your religion to it. Well, no, that's how you heard it. But sovereign as a definition, you can look at it as some people believe it's a belief system again. Some people believe they themselves are sovereign. So it's not necessarily specifically a religious thing, but it is something to realize that, again, you can take something and turn it into something else.
Right. Just like spirituality.
Yeah, exactly.
Is spirituality Christianity or religion? No.
Right. You just have to look at it from a 30,000-foot view, right?
Right.
You can't look at it just in this little narrow vision. When you're working with people, especially no matter at what level that is you have to step back and kind of remove yourself almost.
It's funny you say that because I was just thinking of the fact that in regards to acceptance, hot, sticky situations, hard to believe, you can't grasp, you can't understand. It's then kind of one of those times where you have to step back and remove yourself from the situation or from whatever it is. If you take away the emotion, what do you have?
What do you have? I'm not going to give the right answer.
Right. Well, I'm not going to say what the answer would be. I want people to think about that.
Yeah.
If you take
But
away...
that's the initial reaction.
Right.
I'm not going to have the right answer. Why are you asking me?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you take away, and what do you have? You have a circumstance, a situation, and it's still going to be whatever you believe it to be. But a lot of times you can see things for what they really are if you remove the emotion.
Yeah. So I've said, in fact, I did a tagline for quite a while that the answers and the truth divorce each other, right? And that's kind of what a lot of people do in those situations is they allow their emotions to come in. And so now the answers that are needed are divorcing the truth because those emotions are just totally taken over. I mean, there's other ways to say it too, like facts over fear, I suppose, and whatever else. But whole different avenue there. Gratitude.
Did you know that gratitude can change your life?
I believe that fully, and again, that's a belief for a lot of people.
Right. It's one of those things that is simple yet very difficult.
Yes.
Just by doing something that will take 5 minutes a day, that could alter your life. And so, for instance, there's a lot of negativity, a lot of blame, all that stuff, kind of like what we talked about going on. And people feel stuck. They don't know how to get out. And sometimes they don't want to get out because that's what they're used to. That's what they don't know that there is something else, or they're unaccepting of it.
Yes.
But there is always a way to get out of that. First of all, you have to believe that there is a way. You don't have to know what it is.
Right.
You just have to believe.
Yeah.
But then in order to step forward even out of that would be, what are you grateful for? Are you grateful for that you have your health? Do you have a roof over your head? Instead of complaining about not having something good enough, big enough, or she's not saying the right things, I don't like what she's saying, or I don't like that he's pronouncing what he is, that doesn't matter. It's being grateful for that person or yourself as an individual, as a friend, as that person is a staple.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for you, Matt, because of what you've shared with people and the lives that you've saved, whether I accept or believe anything else otherwise about you.
Yeah.
That's an example. You don't have to like somebody.
Yeah, I think that's important too, especially with what we see with the world. You have, we saw this I'm going to bring politics into it.
Okay.
We saw this at the last election, the big election cycle for presidency. We saw Trump supporters stealing Biden supporter signs, and we saw vice versa and all those things. I mean, these are people's property, and are you 10 years old, 12, 13, that you go around stealing people's political signs?
Right.
And be grateful that you have a neighbor next to you, whether they believe the same thing or not, that's not throwing rocks at your house every day.
They would still call the fire department if your house was on fire.
Exactly. That's my exact point. And it's how did we get here?
Right.
How did we get so ungrateful that literally you can't appreciate that your neighbor has a different opinion than you do?
Right. Again.
Now, I should clarify a little bit of this too, because there's a lot of nuance to neighbors, right?
Oh, I have a bad one, and I have a lot of good ones.
Yeah, and so there's that, and so it's just important to understand. Yes, there are bad neighbors. You might be one of them,
right?
And that's kind of the point. Is there's so many things that we can, if we look hard enough, do the 30,000 foot view, and we can see the good and have gratitude towards.
Right. It's interesting that you brought up that the political point of view of in the presidency, you have Trump and you have Biden. There are people that hate and like both.
Yes.
So I have worked with a client in the past, or several of them actually, that, they're on one side. And I always tell my clients, you're more than welcome to talk about that stuff in my office. However, I won't talk about what my beliefs are because it doesn't matter. That's not why you're here.
Right.
But my point of view is on anything, whether it's political or not, is to see the other side. If you don't understand how they can possibly like that person, and how could you allow that person to be the president or to run to be the president? Okay, so that's your thought. Now let's switch sides here, and we're going to go on the other side, the side that you don't like. And imagine that they're thinking the same thing about you.
Right. And they are.
Why? Yeah. Why is it? Why does it matter? Everybody has their opinion, and I understand why you don't like this person. I understand why you, but that doesn't mean you should condemn and shame and belittle and treat others with disrespect.
Precisely. That reminded me of Eleanor Roosevelt quote, and I wanted to look it up really quick because this is something that's super important to me when discussing these types of things. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. And so great minds discuss ideas. Now, we see the ideas and they're put forth by our politicians. I talk a lot about the ideas and a lot about the policy that are put forth by a lot of different people. And that's really important to understand the difference between talking about the person, right? They made these decisions, they put them into policy. That's something that we should all talk about and say, well, I like this about it, I don't like that about it. Things as adults,
right?
Not as 13-year-old boys in the playground, mad at somebody for, shooting a better basketball game than they did, stuff like that. But that's so important to understand that difference between talking about the person and attacking the person versus looking at and even sometimes attacking the decisions that they made as a leader, right?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes. You take away the Democrat and you take away the Republican.
Yes.
You take away the title.
Yes.
And the color.
Yes.
What do you have? We're all people.
Yeah. Yeah. It is the human race. I get it that a lot of that divisiveness sells. It sells in news outlets. It sells in, even we talked about earlier in the podcast, sports. Even that divisiveness sells in sports.
Right.
I hate the Rams. I hate the Vikings. So we're gonna buy Vikings stuff because we're a Vikings fan, and
Right.
And the circle goes on. So that divisiveness sells, and that's sad to me.
Well, and that's where, you were talking about that being with social media. And again, this is my perception. And it is that, social media does what it needs to do, whether it's truth or not, to get its point across, to raise things, to make things more difficult for one than the other.
Right.
Lies, truth. You don't know. And it's, again, perception.
Yeah. It's interesting because what we saw and have seen post-pandemic and post-election and some of those things, some of the realities that have come out and what's real, what's been fiction and all that. When it comes to social media, I have said all along, it is a tool.
It sure is.
Don't be a tool.
Right.
Right? Like, say your piece, do it in the best way you know how, but again, you don't have to attack a person specifically. Say I don't agree with your views or whatever, but it's
okay.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So that's why, and the reason I bring those up in my mind is that's why people are saying these things, because they're talking about the person, right? They don't have gratitude towards the person. It becomes so ungrateful then in
Right.
their mind. It can't exist, in fact.
There is another thing too, where a lot of times when people pinpoint and blame and criticize, it is also because when people do that, it is due to them not liking something, or it is reflecting something about them
Right.
that they don't like.
Yes. It's projection.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love it when these people are saying, you're projecting. I'm like, well, I wasn't even there, so I can't.
Well, and that's kind of like right now with us. We aren't projecting anything. We are speaking what we feel is our truth or what our beliefs are.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that, I mean, for me to project would be for me to drill or constantly try to instill my beliefs upon you.
Or accuse and blame,
Yes.
like before, yeah. But before we move on to your choices, I grabbed the definition because I think this is pretty important. It's part of the definition of gratitude is readiness to show appreciation for and return kindness. You know, that's so powerful. Readiness.
And kindness.
Yeah. Readiness to show appreciation. Just be ready.
Right.
You know, look for it.
Right. So the one thing too, stepping back to the gratitude, it's simple. 5 minutes in the morning, if you could write down 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for. And then at night, even you could take 5 minutes before you shut your eyes. What are 5 things you are grateful for that from that day? I'm so grateful that car didn't hit me, that I was able to swerve out of the way. I'm so grateful that my lunch was remade since they dropped it on the floor,
Yeah.
you know, and I wasn't late to getting back to work.
But what do people, let's take those 2 things. What do people generally focus on?
The negative,
Yeah.
the bad,
That effer almost hit me.
a lot of rage.
Might have been you who crossed the line. Didn't realize.
Well, and
it.
maybe and you have to think, why is somebody maybe swerving at you? Maybe they're texting and driving.
Yeah.
Maybe their kid is screaming. Maybe they're having a medical emergency. Maybe,
Yep.
Let's be optimistic and not judgmental. Maybe they are making the mistake. Maybe they are doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
Yep.
But it's, again, their choice.
It's the blame. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yes, that choice of theirs could impact you.
Yeah.
But there's nothing you can do about that.
Right.
So how can you change the impact? You get it, that person makes a bad choice. They hit you, fender bender at the stoplight, right? You going to get out and ream them a new one and sock them in the face?
Right.
Or are you going to be displeased and say, you know what? I really wasn't looking forward to this today. Are you okay?
Yep.
This sucks.
Be grateful it wasn't
What's your
worse.
insurance information? Yeah, it could always be worse.
Yeah.
And that's the optimism of it. You have to be optimistic and say, you know what? It could always be worse. Your day may be horrible because of you woke up and your dog is dead, maybe. That sucks.
Yeah.
But, it could be worse.
Yeah.
Not to minimize or anything like that, but trying to keep the optimism, accepting that, yeah, that was really bad. I didn't want that to happen. My feelings are really hurt. But then not sitting and stirring in that and not being able to get out from it.
Right.
So then you go from acceptance into gratitude that I'm grateful that I was able to have the time that I did with my dog.
Yeah. And it's always the things you should look at are the pluses, the positives.
I myself have found in my life, through all my difficulties and trials and, the list goes on. Everybody has it. But the more I got into gratitude, mindset work is huge.
Yeah.
And focusing on myself instead of others, that changes your world.
Truly.
And instead of hating and minimizing, it's loving, caring, doing something good for somebody.
Yeah.
Whether it's not about getting the gratitude from that person or getting known for it. It's just doing it. I love to buy people coffee behind me. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fun, isn't it? Yeah. Totally.
It's simple stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. My daughter was telling me a story. She lives in South Carolina, and she was actually back for a few weeks. It was great, and so she was talking about a coffee line. I was making her coffee every morning. A simple thing, for me to do, but yet she was really appreciative of it. But so that created a memory for her of when she was in line somewhere, and she said. She pulls up and is like, and she's in a hurry. Of course, has to get to work, and grateful for her job. She's got a very big, important job, so being late's not cool, right? So she's like trying to hurry and pulls up to the window, and the person said, "Hey, the person ahead of you paid for you. Would you like to pay for the person behind you?" It's that simple. And she looked at the person and stopped for a few moments, she said. And she was like, this close to saying no. I'm in a hurry. This is a huge benefit for me. I don't have to deal with that.
Right.
And so she says, yeah, okay, I will. And so then the attendant said, this has been going for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Paying for the person behind you. And she's like, I almost messed that up. I didn't want to be that person. But then she said, the biggest thing was that made me feel really good to be able to do that.
Right.
And the attendant did not put pressure on and say, hey, this has been going for 2.5 hours.
Yep.
They said it after she said yes.
Right.
So important, the timing of things. And because you mentioned the recognition, and the attendant could have said, hey, let's keep this going or whatever. But it was like, we're not doing this for recognition. We're simply, this just has happened.
Right.
And would you like to?
At first, she almost made it about her.
Yes.
But then she stopped and said, wait a minute, because that's not in her blood to do that. If she's anything like her family members,
Well.
that, she stopped and said, yeah, I'm in a hurry. I'm going to be late, but I also want to continue this on and make somebody else's day and think about somebody else, because you know what? Maybe that was the last $5 they had and they needed that coffee.
Yes. Which leads us into the your choice. They allowed her to they gave her that choice, allowed her the space to give her the choice. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't anything like that. This is your choice.
Right.
It's powerful.
It is powerful.
Let's talk about your choice. Did you like that segue?
Of course I did.
Told the whole story right into that segue.
Oh, man.
Brought it from gratitude and moved it into your choice.
Yep. And been talking about this a lot too lately, as I've mentioned the other night. We've talked about acceptance and gratitude. Those are choices, right?
Yes.
You can accept or not accept. You can be grateful or not be grateful. It is your choice. However, if you are feeling negative and don't have anything nice to say, and you're wondering why life sucks, it's your choice to either continue wondering or to do something about it, right?
Yes.
And so you can make that choice to do these, what some people would call stupid, don't work little gimmicks, and actually have it work if you apply it. Because it's not going to happen if you don't do the work.
Right.
You have to make those steps. Nobody's going to make it happen for you. It's not going to just wake up one morning and there you have it.
Yeah.
You have to want it, and you have to actually work towards it.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah. And you even sometimes have to do a little bit of the work for somebody else if you're depending upon that other person to, and you can even make it about a doctor's appointment. Well, my doctor's not calling me back to get this appointment figured out, and I really need to know today. Call them back.
Right.
Call the office, call wherever that might be, call them back and say, I need to figure this out today. Sometimes we have to do that a little bit too.
And sometimes you have to accept that that's not going to happen.
Right.
But if you know that you did everything you could, what else are you going to do?
Yeah. Your choice, as you've heard me speak, I believe, I put a lot of pressure on your choice. And as difficult and painful as that understanding for a father is, my daughter made a choice, and it cost her life. And I'm very honest about that. I've been approached by at least a dozen people and trying to make it about someone else's choice, blame. And it just simply is not the case.
Right.
The world as we see it and look at it is, they're suing for this and suing for that and whatever else and blame. But she made that choice that day, and it cost her life. Choice is powerful. It frees us when we understand what that really means.
It can free us, but it can also destroy us.
Correct, but what I mean by freeing us is when we understand that it is our choice. All of it's our choice. The choices. I'm not talking about the choices itself.
Right.
I'm talking about that it's our choice. Those are the guardrails, not the choice,
Right.
but that it is our choice.
Right.
I think that we can stop blaming when we understand that. I think, and it's my opinion, that accepting whether you agree with them as a community, as a person, as a religion, as a color of a house, you can accept that that's what it is when you understand that that's your choice, and then the gratitude when you understand that that is your choice.
Yep. Yeah,
It's freeing.
it is very much so. Because, to think about it, do you want to sit in that space of anger and resentment and just negativity? Or do you want to choose to accept that there are choices that other people can make that aren't what you would do? Which one, not you specifically, but which one would you want to do? I don't want to sit and feel like crap the rest of my life, because when you are in that space, the negativity, it's not only a feeling or an emotion, but it's physical to your body as well.
Yeah.
And you would, if you pay attention to the you can pay attention to the difference and notice how much of a change that is. Like, man, I can't even put it into words sometimes, the difference that I've experienced. And it's still something, it's a choice every single day. And every single day, it might be an easy or a difficult one. But it's not something that you make a choice of once and it's over with. It's every single day.
Right, totally. The freeing in the power of understanding what that is, what you just said, is like something that I think is missing, I think, in the world of therapy even, quite frankly. I follow a lot of different types of therapists, and I see kind of their little blurbs, and it's like when you understand that you have those choices, they stay away from choices. They this happened in your life and it wasn't your choice, and so they don't focus on what now you choose just because it happened. There are so many things in a year's time that I had zero participation in it happening, but it happened, and now my choice is what do I do with it? Right? It's my choice on how I respond.
Light the fire, stir the pot, or move on. Yeah.
And there's literally a fire within a year, completely took out my business. A lot of things that I had zero participation in. And when we can understand that it's now our choice to respond, good, bad, in between, that is freeing to me. And I see that in a lot of other people when they really understand what that actually means.
Right. I agree.
Maybe I said that the long way, but
Sometimes the long way is the necessary way.
yeah.
Short isn't always good. From what I never get this right, but I'll try to say it. It's always about how does it go? It's something in regards to a lot of times if you can't grow from it, if it's not difficult, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah, right. I thought of another story. Let me tell you another story.
Okay.
So someone was telling me about their experience in raising their kids, right? One of their kids specifically was always pushing, the edge, right? Always, and occasionally going over the edge a little bit.
Were you talking to my mom one time?
It's actually someone that I doubt either of. I know them, but I doubt that we're mutual. Right. So
I was that person though. That
right, yeah. So, but it was very enlightening to me, and I've heard other people talk about it before or since then too. But this was kind of a pivotal moment for me in my adult life. This child of theirs got involved with doing some damage to a person's home, right? Not significant, not basically needed cleaned up a little bit type thing, but it was a kind of a big deal because it could have gone really wrong, right? And I'll just leave it at that. So the parent said, "At what point did you make the wrong choice?" And I'm like, "What do you mean by when you ask them that question?" And so this person was explaining to me that most of the time we think that the choice is in that moment when we're standing in front of the house, but the choice was actually to get in the car and go along. That's the moment of choice, right? And so if you look at it, I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. You have to look at, this was a long time ago, and like I said, a lot of people have explained it in different ways, but since then, but it's like that moment of choice is much further back than what we realize most of the time.
Correct.
Like maybe you shouldn't even been friends with them in the first place.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can even keep going. But we have to understand where that moment is. I think that's extremely powerful with choice too. Where did that choice become the wrong one? And what I say when I speak to schools specifically, I call it a stop sign moment for my daughter. Like it started at a stop sign, and it was a decision that didn't seem like it was a big deal. And then that decision just kept growing and growing, and she became more comfortable and confident in that decision back then.
Right.
Which is then what that choice that day was not. It didn't originate there, right?
Right.
I'm not naive.
Right.
And so, but that day, that choice at that stop sign months ago cost her life, right? So look at your choice from that perspective is what I encourage, right? Like, where did it go wrong? It's not the moment. It's never the moment.
It's
or right, not necessarily where did it go wrong every time,
right?
But also where did it go right?
Right.
How can I repeat this?
Yeah, that the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about that was a lot of times in addiction, when the person is in recovery and something happens, they drink or they do the drug, right? That's not when the relapse happened. The relapse happened long before the physical aspect of it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all about that choice. Your brain, and it's allowing your brain, I shouldn't even say allowing necessarily, but we have control. There are times that we don't, but there's a lot of times we choose to start navigating and getting comfortable and not doing things that were helping us and keeping us safe. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Kind of like the stop sign thing. We stopped going to meetings. We stopped doing this. We stopped doing that. And we allow our thinking to change. And that's the beginning, you know. It all starts long before the actual drink takes place.
Yeah.
And a lot of people struggle to understand that.
Sure.
So when it, like, just kind of reiterating what you were talking about in regards to your situation, kind of giving somebody else a different perspective of how to look at that, because they're all about your choice.
Yeah.
Are you going to choose, you know, to live or die, to do the drug, to not do the drug, to marry the person, not marry the person, have a baby, not have a baby? I mean, we make choices all the time.
All the time. And inadvertently as well.
Yep.
You know, there's those choices that just happen because of a choice over here, a hard choice, whether that be not necessarily a hard as in difficult, but a choice that had to happen. There's an inadvertent choice that becomes that. That's why I like that 30,000-foot view,
Yep.
right? Like, let's really look at this. Like,
There's this main choice, but there was also a few choices prior that got you to that choice.
yes. It's like I've built tons of things. I mean, furniture for a large part of my adult life, and buildings and other things as well. That you have, as Stephen Covey puts it, you have to begin with the end in mind, right? If you haven't read, have you read Stephen Covey? Mm-hmm. Oh, you got to read Stephen Covey.
Add it to my list.
He's the best. He's the best. I have his book somewhere in here, but or one of his books, or a couple actually, I think. But anyway, I digress. So one of the things that he talks about, and I just read him. Someone told me about him like 4 or 5 years ago, and they're like, they heard several different speeches and different things I had done. And they're like, you sound a lot. Have you read Stephen Covey? You sound a lot like him. Like, I don't know who that is.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's
right?
like, right. I'm like, how do I answer this? And it's like, it ended up being a good thing, thankfully. But if you don't do those things, if you don't begin with how it's going to end, like how we want it to end, not going to end. I said that wrong. What's a house going to end up looking like? Mm-hmm. What's a piece of furniture going to end up looking like? We have to have that understanding that this choice at the beginning has a consequence and an outcome at the end.
In my last 3 or 4 years, there was a client, a specific one I have in mind, but of course I'm not going to share who that is.
You can't say it's me, sorry.
It's just his philosophy on, and I had never heard it before, but or his analogy on, he was talking about how he was going to use, and he said, but instead I played the tape. So like when you get into a situation or a circumstance and you have to make a choice, do I do A or B? Play the tape. How's it going to turn out?
Yeah.
Is that what you want for an outcome?
Right.
Interesting perspective, I thought.
It is. Yeah, a lot of ways to word that, for sure. A lot of ways to look at it. I like it. Anything you want to wrap up with?
I don't know. We could probably sit here and talk all day.
We could.
And there's a lot of things that I'm sure might come back as, backlash or positivity, but either way, it is what it is.
Absolutely.
And
as I don't know who to believe, so I'll trust in God, and the rest of it I'll research.
There you go. And do you believe the research? Well, and everybody has a chance to say what they want to say. So, there's always that opportunity. Maybe, everybody has an opportunity to voice their opinion, whether it's
for
here
sure.
or there. So I encourage people to do it, but do it respectfully.
Yes. And that's interesting that you say that. We do have the First Amendment and in this country, and everybody should say what their opinion is. The thing that's interesting to me is when no matter the political party, no matter the religious view, no matter any of it, when it gets to be violent, like physically violent, when it gets to be like demands and all these other things, I've learned that in most of those cases, what you're saying and what your opinion is not super valid. Mm-hmm. If you have to do that and no one's listening, you might need to rethink your opinion. Mm-hmm. You might need to rethink your perspective.
That definitely is an option. I could go on and on about that as well. There's a lot of reasons why people do the things that they do too.
For sure.
Make the choices. So and that's a whole another 10 episodes.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so, yes, you can come back.
Yep.
I know you're a little nervous at first. Maybe you feel a little bit better about it.
I feel much better, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of, being recorded and being
big lights and right. I mean, what you say, it's out there.
I'm
now.
officially famous now.
Right. I'm working on not being famous, so just like to say what I like to say, and if people listen and want to know more, they will. So it's good.
If not, there's always next channel.
That's right. It's a lot of content out there. So if they're choosing to listen to what we're saying today, thank you for that. Appreciate it. But show Deb the love. I'm going to put a link here in the description and possibly in the comments. I have no doubt that Deb will share it. So Deb, tell us where people can find you. In most cases, people aren't going to say they heard it here, saw it here with what you do, and that's great and okay. But make sure that y'all show Deb the love in some way, whether it be in a year from now or right away.
Right. I am finishing up my webpage, so that'll be up shortly. So that would be beyondyourlimitsllc.com. Otherwise, I am on Facebook. I do have a group that's called Awaken You, and also a page that will be up shortly of Beyond Your Limits LLC as well.
Well, this puts a little pressure on.
It does.
Yeah, like let's do it.
Absolutely.
So remember, don't believe everything. I won't say the line.
Thank you, Matt.
You bet. Thanks a lot for watching, listening, and if you have questions, it's AskMatt@MattLoganSpeaks.com, and perhaps your question or comment will get on the next episode of Ask Matt Anything. See you next time.